Welcome back to 16-Bit Zen. Hey, I'm back. No. Welcome back to 16-Bit Zen. So, unfortunately, the current state of Sega is not looking too hot. So, as a longtime fan, I thought I'd weigh in on it. So, let's dive on in. Welcome back to 16-Bit Zen. So, the current state... Welcome back to 16-Bit Zen. So the current state of Sega is not looking too hot. So as a longtime fan, I thought I'd weigh in on it. So let's dive on in, guys. Sega recently announced that they are going through yet another restructuring, and they're going to be letting 300 people go, and they're going to be relocating their North American headquarters to Southern California. And it's always sad that they're going to lose people, they're going to let people go, but from a fan perspective, this is also sad and worrying because they have talked about growth areas where they're going to be migrating to smartphone and PC. It's completely unclear how much of a shift of focus we're going to see, but it appears that there's definitely a shift of focus. So how did we get to this point? It seems that Sega had a little too much riding on the success or failure of Sonic Boom, which of course didn't turn out so well in sales and reception. I know it's cool to hate on Sonic, all the cool kids do it. Sonic Team was not involved with Sonic Boom though, we have to remember that. Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations were respectable games. Sonic Lost World had its moments as well. So I hope that Sonic Team continues to make Sonic console games. But Sega definitely needs to get the memo that don't rush them. Do not rush them. Just let them take the time to polish those games up and make them good. Because they have the talent, they can do it if you just don't rush them. There's a long history of Sonic games being rushed. We all know this. Back to the main point though. The 7th generation console squeeze really put the squeeze on the mid-tier development. All mid-tier development. Oh my god, I can't do this without my computer. Okay, let's pause it for a second. Okay. 7th generation... The 7th console generation really put the squeeze on the mid-tier developers. We lost a lot of legendary developers like Hudson Soft and Irem. Developers that weren't scared to take risks, had a long track record of making great games, new IPs, and it put the squeeze on a lot of major developers like Square Enix and Capcom as well. There was a significant drop in quality from those developers after PS2, GameCube, Xbox, into Xbox 360, PS3, and Wii. Really at the core of the problem is skyrocketing development. Really at the core of the problem was, of course, the skyrocketing development costs. It just became too expensive for those the mid-tier developers. They couldn't keep up. They could not... the Japanese developers also had the problem of always sticking to proprietary engines, game engines. They wouldn't license in third-party engines, so that definitely hurt them as well. They didn't have the resources to keep up. Oh my gosh, I'm just completely losing everything I was doing. The games industry has expanded a lot, but most of that expansion has actually come from the mainstream, which is, of course, the big, humongous budget, annualized games. The games industry has expanded a lot, but most of that expansion has come from the huge budget. The games industry has expanded a lot, but most of that expansion has come from the bloated budget, annualized franchises. the games industry has expanded a lot, but most of that expansion has come from the bloated budget annualized franchises, particularly the first-person shooters. There's a fair amount of previously PC-centric developers that migrated into a console-first strategy for a time there. They're kind of shifting back to PC over the last number of years. But, companies like Bethesda had a lot of success outside of, they don't do the annualized franchises or first-person shooters particularly, but there was a lot of success with that too, which further squeezed the Japanese back, the mid-tier Japanese back, because they couldn't keep up. If it doesn't work, that's fine. Another key problem of the HD console generation is that graphical expectations were through the roof. If you didn't have cutting edge or near cutting edge graphics, a lot of the game would get shredded in reviews. A lot of gamers would be like, this game feels cheap. They couldn't get into it. People were so focused on graphics, especially in the first few years of that generation. In Japan, gamers tend to favor gameplay over graphics more. So a lot of those games could get released in Japan, and it wasn't too big of a deal that some of the assets might have almost looked like they were from a PS2 game. As long as the game was fun and enjoyable, that's what really mattered. And that kept a lot of publishers scared of localizing a fair number of Japanese games as well. They didn't want to bring them over and have them just shredded in reviews and expected bad... That scared a lot of publishers from localizing Japanese games as well. I know not everybody outside of Japan is a graphics whore, but to add insult to industry, mainstream gamers really don't appreciate the breadth of creativity and all the different genres of gaming that gaming has to offer. There's so much there to offer, and you've got so many millions of mainstream gamers that mostly just play first-person shooters and maybe just a few huge budget games. Go big or go home kind of mentality. It's like everything's got to be a summer blockbuster movie or it sucks, right? Now, I think everybody has the right to enjoy gaming however they want, so no judgment, honestly, truly. But I just think these points are important for understanding the current climate and how we got there and how this impacts Sega, because they're not able to continue most of their legacy IPs because they're in core and traditional gaming franchise genres, that are not popular today. People aren't interested in those. Of course, there are some exceptions, and we can criticize Sega for how they handled, for example, Valkyria Chronicles. The game sold over 1 million on PS3, and then they just completely shifted focus and put the sequels on the PSP, which seemed like the right move for Japan, but the sales just dwindled down, and shoot, that's not right. Now, there are some exceptions, but we can criticize Sega for things like Valkyria Chronicles, where the first game sold over 1 million copies, and then they went ahead and put the sequels on the PSP, which was all but dead outside of Japan by then. And expectedly, the sales dwindled. It seemed like a smart move for Japan, but not for worldwide. And the first game was as big of a success as it was because of worldwide sales. As a fan, I just hope that they can continue to put out some titles that make them enough money that they can sustain themselves, and then hopefully still throw us a bone, us fans, a bone every once in a while. You know, like Shinobi for 3DS. It was a really good game. The 3DS 3D Classics, the M2, has been porting over really well done as well. I've really enjoyed those. One major concern on a lot of gamers' minds is, where does this leave Atlas? Is Atlas going to be affected? We really don't know. There's no word either way. About a year ago, right after the Sega purchased Atlas, I believe it was a Sega executive was quoted as saying something along the lines of that they might be open to Atlas using Sega IP or maybe localizing some Sega games. And what the hell ever happened to that? We've missed so many Shining games over the last number of years, Shining series games. We're starting to miss a lot of Phantasy Star games, and the list of games that Sega fans really want hasn't left Japan, haven't been localized. It's just started to pile up and up, and the only consolation is that we're getting Yakuza 5 localized. I think what bothers me the most is that about every year at this time, I can go online and look at upcoming release lists for Sega games, and there's at least a few that grab my eye that I'm really interested in. And this year, I go look, and there's like almost nothing. It's so scant. There's just about nothing, and that's pretty disheartening as a Sega fan. So Sega, buddy, you've had a pretty solid 14-year run as a third party, and I'm simultaneously... So Sega, buddy, you've had a pretty solid 14-year run as a third party. Honestly, I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed a lot of these games. I think that you get more of a bad rap than you deserve over these last 14 years. But Legacy fans don't want to be playing on touch controls. We don't want these games on our phone. I don't want to be playing Crazy Taxi on my phone. If you have to subsidize them on mobile and maybe PC, that's fine, and then release the games also on console. You seem to do really well with Sonic Racing Transformed. It was like on every platform there was, I believe. Just run with that. That's a great strategy. Continue to do that. Please just don't abandon consoles and handhelds, and arcades as well. I'm excited about that Luigi's Mansion game, by the way. That looks pretty cool. Developing that with Nintendo and Capcom, great idea. If you do abandon consoles and handhelds, yeah, okay, maybe I'll still be interested in a few PC games here and there, but I don't want to be playing Sega games on my phone, sorry. To any subscribers still watching, I know I promised reviews, and I'm hashing out the review formula. To any subscribers still watching, I know I promised reviews, and I'm still hashing out the formula. I just don't want the format to be all bare bones like these commentary videos. So I appreciate your patience, and till next time.